Hello, and welcome back to the Coachman. For today's reading, we're going to be going back to the late 1920s and all the way over to Poland, which is awesome because I've been watching a great YouTube channel called Night Ride. Um, and these dudes are from Poland, but they fix cars. Although this story isn't about cars, it is about something that flies, and it's actually called The Eagles, and it's by A.J. Glinski. So, further ado, let's get into it. There was once a king who had lost his wife. They had a family of 13, 12 gallant sons, and one daughter, who was exquisitely beautiful. For 12 years after his wife's death, the king grieved very much. He used to go daily to her tomb, and there he would weep and pray and give away alms to the poor. He thought never to marry again, for he had promised his dying wife never to give her children a stepmother. Wow, that's a big ask. That's a big ask, but I gotta give it to him. Like, hey, you have that many kids, and you weep for 12 years. I mean, it means you guys were going pretty strong. So, one day, when visiting his dead wife's grave, as usual, he saw beside him a maiden so entrancingly fair that he fell in love with her and soon made her his second queen. I guess his love didn't last that long. But before long, he found out that he had made a grave mistake. Though she was so beautiful, she turned out to be a wicked sorceress, and not only made the king himself unhappy, proved most unkind to his children, whom she wished out of the way so that her own little son might inherit the kingdom. This is the king. Just just have a coup and just off with her head. You know what I mean? That's all you gotta do. It's not hard. Little poison, you know what I mean? Here and there. It's all good. One day, when the king was far away at war against his enemies, the queen went into her stepchildren's apartments and pronounced, I guess, or summoned some magical words on which every one of the 12 princes flew away in the shape of an eagle, and the princess was changed into a dove. The queen looked out the window to see in what direction they would fly. Then she saw right under the window an old man with a beard as white as snow. I ain't gonna lie, that's some wicked stuff. Turn. He's off. So the king is off to war basically. Well, he is off to war, and you roll into the apartments of all the kids, turn them all to eagles or birds, and that's it. And then you just let them go. That's wicked stuff. What are you here for, old man? She asked. To be witness of your deed, he answered. Then you saw it? I saw it. Then be what? I command. She whispered some magical words. The old man disappeared in a blaze of sunshine, and the queen, as she stood there, dumb with terror, was changed into a basilisk. Okay, so if you don't know, a basilisk, right? A basilisk, like people have seen it, and you probably know what it is. But so it's weird because it's called a cockatrice, right? Normally, a basilisk, it would just be like a snake. It kind of looks like a cobra, but it might be bigger, human size, or whatever it is, like just large. But there are some pictures that, you can go look it up online where if you ever seen something that looks like almost like a chicken, right? A chicken with wings, but it's almost like a chicken and a dragon mixed. So it kind of has like the body of like a chicken with wings, the head of a chicken as well, but like the face of like a dragon and the tail of a dragon. So if you want to go look it up, I highly recommend it because you'll see like they're, both of them. It's either a cockatrice, which is what I described, or the basilisk, which is in like a lot of other terms, just like a giant snake, like or a giant cobra or whatever. So the basilisk ran off in fright, trying to hide herself underground. But her glance was so deadly that it killed everyone she looked at, so that all the people in the palace were soon dead, including her own son, whom she slew by merely looking at him. And this once populous and happy royal residence quickly became an uninhabited ruin which no one dared to approach for fear of the basilisk lurking in its underground vaults. So think about that. This sorceress literally tries to take out all the king's kids, yeah? Then gets turned into like this mystical demon, goes around and all she has to do is look at, and then she just wipes out the whole kingdom herself. So everything she wanted is just like gone. And now she's just there by herself. So I want to say something bad, but I can't because I curse. But anyway, tough nuts, lady. All right. So meanwhile, the princess, who had been changed into a dove, flew after her brothers, the eagles. But not being able to overtake them, she rested under a wayside cross and began cooing mournfully. "What are you grieving for, pretty dove?" asked an old man with a snow-white beard who just then came by. Sound familiar? "I'm grieving for my poor dear father, who is fighting in the wars far away, for my beloved brothers, who have flown away from me into the clouds. I am grieving also for myself. Not long ago, I was a happy princess, and now I must wander over the world as a dove, to hide from the birds of prey and be parted forever from my dear father and brothers." "You may grieve and weep, little dove, but do not lose hope," said the old man. "Sorrow is only for a time, and all will come right in the end." So saying, he stroked the little dove, and she at once regained her natural shape. She kissed the old man's hand in her gratitude, saying, "How can I ever thank you enough? But since you are so kind, will you not tell me how to rescue my brothers?" The old man gave her an ever-growing loaf and said, "This loaf is enough to sustain not only you, but 1,000 people for 1,000 years, without ever diminishing. Go towards the sunset and weep your tears into this little bottle, and then, when it is full..." And the old man told her what else to do, blessed her, and disappeared. That's some cold-blooded stuff. Hand somebody a loaf, tell them to cry in this bottle, and you'll be all right, you know what I mean? And then just and bone out, like just disappear. Good stuff. All right. So the princess traveled on towards the sunset, and in about a year, she reached the boundary of the next world and stood before an iron door where Death was keeping guard with his scythe. For those of you who are here and don't know what a scythe is, it's wicked because if you know that like long blade that the Grim Reaper, carries, or if you know what a photo is of like the Grim Reaper, where he's just like a bag of bones, a long like I don't know black bed sheet over him, and he has that long wooden stick with a huge like knife on the end, right? The funny part about that is that the first time I ever saw one in real life, no joke, a friend of mine, her name was Nicole. She was originally from Austria. She took me back to Austria, and her grandfather was cutting the grass with this thing. I'm being dead honest. The grass was maybe 4 inches long, and he took the entire yard down to 2 inches with that scythe, and it was on point. It was unreal. So, scythe probably illegal in this country, but they shouldn't be because they're great tools. Then they're awesome. So yeah, that's what a scythe is. "Stop, princess," he said. "You can proceed no further, for you are not yet parted by death from your own world." "But what am I to do?" she asked. "Must I go back without my poor brothers?" "Your brothers," said Death, "fly here every day in the guise of eagles. They want to reach the other side of this door, which leads into the other world, for they hate the one they live in. Nevertheless, they and you also must remain there until your time be come. Therefore, every day I must compel them to go back, which they can because they are eagles. But how are you going to get back yourself? Look there. The princess looked around her and wept bitterly, for though she had not perceived this before, nor seen how she got there, she saw now that she was in a deep abyss, shut in all sides by such high precipices that she wondered how her brothers, even with eagle wings, could fly to the top. But remembering what the mysterious old man had said, she took courage and began to pray and weep till she had filled the little bottle with her tears. Soon she heard the sound of wings over her head and saw 12 eagles flying. The eagles dashed themselves against the iron portal, beating their wings upon it and imploring death to open it to them. But death only threatened them with his scythe, saying, "Hence, ye enchanted princes, you must fulfill your penance on earth till I come for thee myself." The eagles were about to turn and fly when all at once they perceived their sister. They came round her and caressed her hands, leveling with their beaks. She at once began to sprinkle them with her tears from lacrimatory, and in one moment the 12 eagles were changed back into the 12 princes and joyfully embraced their sister. So just in case you might have forgotten, a lacrimatory, right? If you ever see like in any kind of like Renaissance or old school movies with magic or whatever, where they carry around the potions in their bottle, like little bottles, and they open them up and like they drink them real quick, or they throw them at somebody, or pour them into like, I don't know, witches pouring them in there. That's what a lacrimatory is. So it's just like a small vial of something that holds like potions or whatever. It's just a small bottle of like whatever. The princess then fed them all around from her ever-growing loaf. But when their hunger was appeased, they began to be troubled as to how they were to ascend from the abyss, since they no longer had wings that they could fly up. But the princess knelt down and prayed, "Bird of heavenly pity, hear, by each labor, prayer, and tear. Come in thy unvanquished power, come and aid us in this hour." And all at once there shot down from heaven to the depth of the abyss a ray of sunshine, on which descended a gigantic bird with rainbow wings, a bright sparkling crest, and peacock's eyes all over his body, a golden tail, and silvery beast. "What are your commands, princess?" asked the bird. "Carry us from this threshold of eternity to our own world." "I will, but you must know, princess, that before I can reach the top of this precipice, with you on my back, 3 days and 3 nights must pass, and I must have food on the way, or my strength will fail me, and I shall fall down with you to the bottom, and we shall all perish." In other words, he is just saying, "Lady, you better have some food for me or some grenade, or we're going down in flames." But I'm sure they're going to be all right. "I have an ever-growing loaf, which will suffice both for you and ourselves," replied the princess. "Then climb upon my back, and whenever I look around, give me some bread to eat." The bird was so large that all the princes and the princess in the midst of them could easily find place on his back, and he began to fly upwards. He flew higher and higher, and whenever he looked around at her, she gave him bits of the loaf, and he flew on upwards and onwards. So then they went on steadily for 2 nights and days, but upon the 3rd day, when they were hoping in a short time to view the summit of the precipice, and to land upon the borders of this world, the bird looked around as usual for a piece of bread, or a piece of the loaf. The princess was just going to break off some to give him, when a sudden violent gust of wind from the bottom of the abyss snatched the loaf from her hand and sent it whistling downwards. Not having received his usual meal, the bird became sensibly weaker and looked around once more. The princess trembled with fear. She had nothing more to give him, and she felt that he was becoming exhausted. In utter desperation, she cut off a piece of her flesh and gave it to him. Okay, let's see how this goes. Having eaten this, the bird recovered strength and flew upwards faster than before. But after an hour or two, he looked round once more. So she cut off another piece of her flesh. The bird seized it greedily and flew on so fast that in a few minutes he reached the ground at the top of the precipice. When they alighted, and he asked her, "Princess, what were those 2 delicious morsels you gave me last? I never ate anything so good before." Yeah, how do you tell a bird? Yeah, I gave you a piece of meat, dude. Tastes like chicken, don't it? All right. "They were part of my flesh. I had nothing else for you," replied the princess in a faint voice, for she was swooning away with pain and loss of blood. The bird breathed upon her wounds, and the flesh at once healed over and grew again as before. Then he flew up again to heaven and was lost in the clouds. The princess and her brothers resumed their journey, this time towards the sunrise, and at last arrived in their own country, where they met their father returning from the wars. The king was coming back victorious over his enemies, and on his way home had first heard of the sudden disappearance of his children and of the queen, and how his palace was tenanted only by a basilisk with a death-dealing glance. He was therefore most surprised and overjoyed to meet his dear children once more, and on the way his daughter told him all that had come to pass, meaning she gave him the skinny of what this little witch was doing. When they got back to the palace, the king sent one of his nobles with a looking glass down into the underground vaults. The basilisk saw herself reflected in his mirror, and her own glance slew her immediately. They gathered up the remains of the basilisk and burnt them in a great fire in the courtyard, afterwards scattering the ashes to the 4 winds. When this was done, the king, his sons, and his daughter returned to live in their former home and were all as happy as could ever be. Thank you very much for joining me, and if you're listening here on your favorite station, just keep listening. If you happen to get a chance and you'd like to know, maybe, I don't know, read a little bit more about my stories, or just find other places where you can listen, where it might make it easier or whatever, you can definitely head over to www.thecoachman.com. That is www.th3coachman.com, or you can head over to the Facebook page, and or you can head over to my YouTube channel and check out everything is over there. It uploads and all that. But more or less, if you have a story that you would like me to read, one that you're like, hey, I think this guy would, do a good job, definitely head over to the webpage, leave me your email address, send me an email, and just say, hey, can you read this? And we'll just go from there. But until the next story, you take care.